How does the United States go from offering a staggering $10 million bounty on a terrorist leader's head to just 1 year later partnering with that same man, and then have that brand new deal immediately result in American bloodshed? Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at the stunning and really chaotic security shift in Syria. It all follows the very swift collapse of the Bashar al-Assad regime back in December of 2024. For decades, America's posture in the region was, it was static, maybe uncomfortable, but stable. And now that's all gone. And it's been replaced by this high-stakes, purely transactional strategy. The new focus is all about shrinking our footprint and managing risk. So our mission is to dig into the sources that detail this pivot and, maybe more importantly, analyze how quickly this fragile new system failed. And this whole deep dive really centers on a horrifying event from just this month, December 2025. We're talking about the ambush near Palmyra that killed 2 U.S. Army soldiers from the Iowa National Guard. One was identified as Nate Bunn, an American civilian interpreter.
And what's so fascinating here and just so profound is that this wasn't an attack from an outside enemy. This wasn't a drone strike or, a typical ISIS ambush. Our sources are calling this a major security breach that came from within the very Syrian forces the U.S. is now relying on. So we have to look at the conflicting stories about who this attacker really was and, why this fragility matters so much for American security.
Okay, let's start with the political earthquake that even made this possible. I mean, this change happened with just breathtaking speed.
Absolutely. To get the risk we're dealing with now, you have to appreciate just how fast the regime collapsed. Bashar al-Assad's family had been in power for 5 decades, and that rule was just gone. It ended on December 8th, 2024. A rebel offensive that was supposed to make, modest gains just punched right through and took the whole country in 11 days.
11 days. And that didn't just replace one dictator with another. It brought in a leader whose past fundamentally changes the game for the U.S. The new interim president is a man named Ahmad al-Shara. And here's the part that should really make you pause. Al-Shara is the former leader of Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, a very powerful Islamist insurgent group.
And that's not just, a footnote in his political past.
Yeah.
That designation put him directly in America's crosshairs until very, very recently. He was on the U.S. list of designated terrorists. And like you said, there was a $10 million bounty on his head.
So how does Washington justify this? I mean, for someone listening, how do you square a $10 million bounty with a photo of President Trump shaking al-Shara's hand?
It's a huge shift, and our sources all point to one thing: transactional necessity. Despite the history, the administration saw that al-Shara was in control and they wanted an exit. So they engaged, and fast. They met directly, lifted some sanctions, and even let the Syrian embassy reopen in Washington.
It's a move that just screams pragmatism over any kind of ideology. So Syria, led by a man we used to call a terrorist, is now formally part of the global anti-ISIS coalition. It sounds like something from a movie.
Well, that's transactional diplomacy for you. The deal is really simple. The U.S. works with Damascus, and in return, Damascus has to deliver 2 things. First, some local stability, and second, and this is the big one, the new government has to keep the lid on the 5,000 to 7,000 ISIS fighters locked up in detention centers across the country. Now, critics are saying this move basically legitimizes a former jihadi, that it forces the U.S. to tolerate instability just for the sake of getting out.
And we learned the brutal cost of that unstable partnership very, very quickly.
Right.
Which brings us to that insider betrayal near Palmyra.
Right. The setting was supposed to be routine. It was a key leader engagement, a lunch meeting between U.S. and Syrian security officials. It was supposed to build trust. Instead, someone opened fire on the Americans.
The toll was immediate. 3 Americans killed. Those 2 soldiers from the Iowa National Guard, Nate Bunn and another soldier, and 1 civilian interpreter. 3 other U.S. service members were wounded.
Right, along with 2 of the Syrian partner forces who actually moved in to stop the shooter. He was eventually killed by his own Syrian comrades.
But the key here, the really chilling part, is who the attacker was. And the security failure that let it happen. This wasn't an outsider.
No, and that's the most alarming detail. He wasn't an enemy combatant. He was a member of the Syrian Internal Security Forces. He was wearing the uniform of our partner, and he'd only been recruited 2 months earlier. And what's worse, Syrian officials later admitted they already suspected him. They thought he had extremist Islamist ideas and was leaking information.
Wait, if they knew it was compromised, why was he armed? Why was he anywhere near U.S. personnel? What does that say about our new partners?
It says their control is porous, maybe non-existent. According to their own spokesman, the decision had already been made to fire him. He was supposed to be dismissed the very next day. As a precaution, they just reassigned him to guard equipment away from leadership. But he still got a weapon, got to that meeting, and opened fire. The officials had to call it a major security breach. It wasn't just a failure. It was a known risk that they tolerated, and it turned deadly.
And this is where the story gets really interesting, because the official U.S. and Syrian narrative immediately clashed with what experts on the ground were saying, U.S. Central Command and Syrian officials. They quickly called him a lone ISIS gunman, an outsider who slipped through.
Which is a convenient story, right? Because if it's ISIS, the partnership is still solid. It's a threat they're fighting together. But counterterrorism experts, they pushed back immediately. They suggested the attacker wasn't ISIS at all. They said he was a hardline HTS loyalist. Some sources even named him as Mahmoud al-Hussein, a former senior HTS commander.
Okay, hold on. If President al-Shara is the former leader of HTS, why would an HTS loyalist attack U.S. forces who are now partnered with their old boss? That makes no sense.
That is the central tension. That's the crack in the foundation of this whole new regime. If it was an HTS loyalist, it means this was a jihadi attack from within the security forces, directly challenging al-Shara's new pragmatism. It suggests a deep schism. Al-Shara may have traded his jihadi past for power, but a lot of his old followers see this American partnership as a betrayal.
So it almost doesn't matter if the shooter was loyal to ISIS or HTS. The attack is just devastating proof that the forces we are trusting with American lives are deeply infiltrated by extremists who reject the entire deal.
That's exactly right. The incident exposes the core gamble the U.S. took. The bet was that this new regime could professionalize overnight and, manage its own internal conflicts. The deaths of 3 Americans prove that the loyalty of the forces we're relying on is still very much split.
And this all happened within this new American strategy. They've shifted from, static deterrence to flexible oversight. What does that actually mean on the ground?
In short, it means a dramatic reduction in our commitment. Static deterrence meant having big bases, being ready for a large-scale fight. Flexible oversight is, it's about cost-cutting. Our troop presence has been slashed to under 1,000 personnel. We are not nation-building anymore.
It's just a very narrow logistical checklist now.
Exactly. The mission is down to 3 goals. 1, secure the prisons holding those 5,000 to 7,000 ISIS fighters. 2, keep key roads open for logistics. And 3, protect a few sensitive sites like oil fields. We're basically just trying to keep the lid on a powder keg from a distance and hoping the new Syrian government can handle everything else.
The U.S. footprint is much smaller, but there is one asset that's still incredibly important, the Al-Taf garrison. What's its role in this new setup?
Al-Taf is critical. It's become what our sources call a regional control node. Its value is huge because of its location. It disrupts the Iranian supply lines to Lebanon, it protects Jordan's border, and it gives us surveillance over that whole tri-border area. It's the anchor point for the whole strategy, really.
And this entire strategy is being driven by a huge policy battle back in Washington. Our sources really lay out the divisions here.
Oh, absolutely. The domestic politics are driving the whole thing. On one side, you have advocates for restraint. Think Vice President Vance or DNI Gabbard. They see Syria as a classic forever war. Their main goal is to cut costs and focus American power elsewhere. And, the public is with them. There's a powerful statistic in the sources. 52% of Americans believe it's better to pay less attention to foreign affairs.
So for them, the risk of an unstable partner is worth it if it means we can pull back. But then you have the national security hawks, Secretary of State Rubio, Senator Graham, and they're warning this is a fantasy.
And that raises the big question, right? What is the real price of this policy? The hawks warn that pulling back and relying on a compromised partner doesn't reduce risk. It just transfers it. They say it creates a vacuum for a jihadi resurgence and invites our adversaries, like Iran and Russia, to fill the space we leave behind.
And the success of this whole strategy, whether you're a hawk or you favor restraint, it all hinges on one thing: the professionalism of the new Syrian security forces.
That is the entire gamble. It all comes down to their ability to professionalize and to curb what experts call identity-based mobilization. That's a crucial concept here.
Okay, walk us through that. What does identity-based mobilization mean here? Because it seems like that's the key to what happened at Palmyra.
It's when a government, instead of building a neutral professional army, relies on tribal call-ups or sectarian recruiting to fill the ranks quickly. They call up former insurgents, local tribal chiefs, whoever is loyal in that moment. It's a shortcut, but it's incredibly unstable.
And that's exactly what we saw. The attacker was recruited through that kind of rapid loyalty-based process, a process that completely failed to vet him.
Exactly. If your local security forces are built on these shifting loyalties instead of professional standards, that structure will fail under pressure. And when it fails, it's not just one attack. The whole security landscape fragments. And that creates the perfect vacuum for the Islamic State to come back. The problem isn't just fighting the enemy, it's the weakness of our new partner.
So what does this all mean for the future in Syria? The U.S. is trying to leave a volatile region by handing security over to a man we just took off the terrorist list. And we just saw the deadly result of that deal in the Syrian desert.
We're not the architect of Syria's future anymore. We're just a risk manager trying to keep a ticking time bomb from going off. The core challenge is the reliability of our partner. When your security depends on shifting loyalties, that identity-based mobilization, instead of professional law, you get fragmentation and danger. And that is the deadly paradox the Palmyra attack showed us.
The U.S. strategy is defined by cost-cutting and disengagement. But the cost of that Palmyra attack, 2 soldiers from the Iowa National Guard and an interpreter, killed by an infiltrated partner, it proves something. It proves that when America steps back, the risk doesn't just disappear. It just gets paid for in American blood by the brave few we still have deployed. So you have to ask yourself, was partnering with a former HTS leader the right way to get out? Or did we just trade a clear enemy for an unstable, infiltrated one?